a warm welcome to everyone watching this. We hope you're being kind to yourselves and one another. So today, the 13th of May, is the start of Mental Health Awareness Week. And here at BuildForce, we're taking time to stop, to discuss it and to prioritise it. Now, the theme of this year's campaign is movement. Being physically active is great for our bodies and our minds. And despite the evidence that keeping physically fit can promote good mental health, we know there are barriers preventing us doing so, whether it's time or money, body image, lack of motivation, being too tired, or the one that we always tell ourselves, we'll do it tomorrow. So movement doesn't need to be investing thousands on a gym membership. It can be as simple as stepping off a bus a stop or two early, giving your child a push on a swing in the park after school, or dancing in your kitchen whilst you make dinner. But to support us through this chat, we welcome Bernie Graham, our mental health lead, to educate us and offer some practical support and advice. And to discuss why movement is important to them, the benefits of it, and how to get that bug, we welcome Sally Orange. So Sally Orange, MBE, might I add. So a very warm welcome, Sally, and thank you for your time. So Sally, you started your career as a physio and then joined the army, is that right?
That's right, yes. I served for 22 years in the Royal Army Medical Corps as a physiotherapist. So do have a background in the physical activity, but also from my own experiences of severe depression and chronic anxiety, have the understanding from the other side and the importance that physical activity can have on the mind as well.
And your recent physical attributes, what you're most known for. So what happens after leaving the army?
So yeah, I guess, if I have to share some of my story, goes back before the army, that actually got me into physiotherapy, and that was actually breaking my own leg when I was 16 years old, and that led to surgery, and it took me 7 months to learn to walk again. I had to have metal work, and at the time, it 16 years old, just about to do A levels. It was really, really difficult. And unfortunately, I failed my A levels, but I'd learned what a physiotherapist was and thought, do you know what? This is helping people. I love what it's about. And that's what I want to do as a career. But obviously, the failed A levels didn't help. But I knew that that was my driver and that's what I wanted to do. So I resat my A levels. But unfortunately, the second time I did even worse than the first time. But I had good enough A levels to be able to go to university, and I thought, I'll go and do radiography. It's similar to physio. It's not at all. I was on my placement and I thought, no, I desperately want to be a physio. So I applied for university, and I swapped courses and went and did a health studies course. And basically every year for 6 years, I applied to be a physiotherapist, and was rejected every year for 6 years. But I finally got a place. So I first applied in 91 and finally got a place in 97. And then 3 years training. So graduated in 2000, 9 years after first applying, finally getting to that goal and being able to use the, the physical attributes of movement. And that then got me into the army, and I've been really incredibly lucky to do lots of fantastic things with the army. But I suppose, in answer to your question, I know that's a long answer, what I'm now known for is, I do a lot of running, I do a lot of different sports, but I am the only person in the world that's ran a marathon on every continent dressed as a different piece of fruit.
Wow. And the inspiration's your surname, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So Sally Orange, that really is my name. People often think that I've changed my name because of what I do, but actually it was my name that was the inspiration. And I remember as a little girl, 8 years old, watching the London Marathon and thinking, wow, I would love to do that. It just looked absolutely amazing, the atmosphere. But unfortunately, it took me till I was 34 until I actually plucked up the courage to actually do the London Marathon. And I actually did it as a superhero the first time I did it. And I remember crossing the line and just feeling an absolute superhero. and then thinking never ever again, because it was tough. But I think, you know, that type 2 fund that after did make me think, yeah, I will do it again. And I'd already raised quite a lot of money, and so I thought I've got to do something different, and that's where my name sort of came into play. And I thought I'll run as an orange, and that's kind of where it all started, really.
Wow. I've got to share something with you, Sally. I wasn't expecting any of this. Firstly, you and I have a couple of things in common. One, I failed my A levels as well. And still remember the clip round the ear hole I got from my dad when I opened the letter. Um, and also, one of the first interviews I ever had for work was as a radiographer.
Oh, wow.
Really odd. So, kindred spirit, we get there. And I think perseverance is a very, very big part of what you're talking about. It's the tenacity to keep on going. So, I'm in awe. I'm in awe, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to personalize some of this a bit later on. But I wanted to ask you a particular question. You talked about you know you had some difficulties around depression and anxiety, and the physical stuff helped you. How did you engage? I've been down that road, as many people have, but you're feeling such a lack of motivation. How did you muster that to start looking after yourself through physical activity? How did you get that together?
Yeah, really, really great question, Bernie, because it's you know, the fact that I run marathons, people think, and I saw somebody yesterday and they're like, but you're really, really healthy. You know, you're always really, really fit. But there was a time when I couldn't get out of bed to get a shower. I couldn't, you know, the thought of brushing my teeth was immense. And it, you know, or going to the end of the garden was really, really tough. And it was a real sense of having to break things down. You know, I got to the point where I didn't leave the house for 2 months, and I didn't speak on the phone for 2 years. And I remember the times of going for a shower and my sister saying, how about going for a shower, but don't worry about washing your hair. You know, or the times where I could manage a shower and wash my hair, but then when I got out of the shower, actually drying my hair was too much. So it was a case of still sort of celebrating the fact that I'd managed to get in the shower. And you know, I see that with lots of things that I do, is that really, you know, breaking it down. It can be too over.
So one step at a time, sort of getting the satisfaction from one achievement, not putting pressure on yourself for the next one. Am I getting the right idea on what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, absolutely. And you know, the pressure is a real sense of what I'm about. And I feel pressured. I think that's just my personality, and I've learned over time that I have high expectations of myself. And but I also feel that society puts pressure on us as well. And so the amount of people with running a marathon that say to me, what time are you going for? Or what time did you achieve? And I turn around and I just tell them the time of my life, because I'm in control of that. Where I often say to people, have you ever ran a marathon? And they'll quite often say no. So I don't know why they're interested or bothered about the time. But I feel if I set myself a time and I don't achieve that time, then I know my brain will beat myself up about it. But if I go for the time of of my life, I'm in control of that. I can see if I see other people along the way that I can help, or if I can chat to them along the way. And you know, for me, it's about the crowds, it's about smiling, and I give myself a goal when I run a marathon is to smile. That's what I want to do. Now, the costumes also make people smile, which is a really nice thing, and it's really nice to be able to make people smile. But then people will often ask me why. Why am I dressed as an apple, orange, or banana? As I'm sure that might have been one of your questions. But what I found is the great thing is that so many people come and say, why are you dressed like that? And I'm able to say, I want to break the stigma and change the conversation on mental ill health. And it really breaks the ice. And so often people might say that perhaps they or someone they know has had a problem, and it opens that conversation. Whereas I feel if I had a t-shirt that said, come and speak to me about mental health, there may well be some people who would do that. But I think the people who perhaps need to, or are in a state of, you know, not in denial almost, they wouldn't. But also, if they're not happy talking about, you know, their mental health or that conversation, we can just talk back about the costume again. It's bright, it's colourful, and I often say to people, just do it. Forget night with their just do it. I say just do it when looking at wanting to start things, because it doesn't have to start with a marathon. And you know, even the marathons that I do, I have to break them down. I did actually last year run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. So I've done it in a, you know, over a couple of months, but doing it in a couple of days. And I remember exactly one of those marathons. I've got so many stories from that and so many sort of learnings for me about mental health. And my whole reason for wanting to take on the 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days is because I know that mental ill health is not just a problem in this country. It is global. It is worldwide. And that's why I wanted to take my message around the world. But I distinctly remember my 3rd marathon in Dubai. And I was really struggling with my stomach, and the marathon was along the boardwalk, and there was all these lampposts along the way, and there was loads of people along, and I suddenly remember thinking, seeing what became my best friends, and basically I told myself that I would run from one lamppost to the next, then I would walk to the next one, and then I would run. And I did that for 3 miles because I was really struggling. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about the next mile. I wasn't thinking about the end of that marathon. I wasn't thinking about the next 4 marathons that I'd still got to do in the next 4 days. I was just thinking about that lamppost. And it really reminded me how I was when I was really unwell. And I do have to say, at the end of that marathon, I did go and hug the lampposts because they really had become my best friends, and they'd become my support as well. Because at one point, I just had to lean on it. I literally had to stand and lean on this lamppost and just take a breath because I felt so unwell. And I just saw that as a real metaphor for life. But I also, there was another marathon, probably my hardest marathon ever. I've done 83 marathons now. And the marathon in Madrid on this 777 was supposed to be on a race course, but the planes had been delayed, and we ended up having to do 33 laps of a housing estate in Madrid, which wasn't that glamorous. And there was lots of ups and downs on it. And I, again, was really, really struggling. This was number 4. And I was crying. You know, I was really, really struggling. I was crying all the way around it. And it was really interesting seeing other people's reactions to that crying, because there was probably about 40 of us doing this race, and some would go past me and they wouldn't say a word. Some would go past me and ask if I was okay. I clearly wasn't, because I was crying, but they would carry on anyway. And some would stop and say, "Are you?" Or some would ask me if we're okay, and I'd say no. And they stopped and they chatted with me, and they helped me. And it really made me realize what a day in the life of mental illness is like. That there are people who don't know what to say, so they will just carry on. That there are those that will ask but don't like the answer, so will carry on. And there were those that will stop, and even though there wasn't a huge amount they could do, they were there to support me. But I also have to remember that everybody else was doing a marathon at the same time. So those people who went past me and didn't say anything, they're also in their own mind trying to do something. And those that there were some that would ask me how I was okay, if I was okay, and I would say no. And although they continued doing their race, once they'd finished, they came back and they did an extra lap with me. So again, it just made me realize that there are those that don't understand. There are those that are empathetic. There are those that can just help distract you. And yeah, it was really symbolic to me about a day in the life of mental illness. And also I turned it round of thinking, I'm crying, I'm really struggling with this. And I just had to think to myself, how lucky am I to be able to do this? I'm in a different country. I have legs that will allow me to walk. So yes, I'm walking, but I'm really privileged to have legs, because a lot of people I know, unfortunately, don't. My background as a physiotherapist has, treating people who either don't have legs or whose legs don't work as they would like them to. So I then just had to try and reframe it and just think, I'm really lucky. Yes, I'm crying, but this will end at some point. And sure enough, it did. It wasn't my fastest marathon, but I probably have the biggest learnings from that time, and relating it to my life, really.
Can I pick something up from that, Sally? Firstly, every single one of my male hormones hurt at the moment, listening to all of this. But I think you mentioned it with your sister, the psychologist trick. I'll go back to something you said a long time ago. Talked about your sister, and you talked about the people on the run. For me, that is about getting social support, having people there for you, people being there in your corner. And I think what you described was, the marathon, some stopped, some said hello, some metaphor for life, because everybody's running their marathons through life. But I think for us, and it's something, we communicate with all the people we work with, how important that social support is, having people in your corner supporting you, valuing you. And for me, it's a crucial pillar of our well-being. And for the people that are transitioning, coming out of the armed forces, they lose a lot of that because it's almost built in to the environment, and now they're losing that. When you left, and were transitioning, were you able to access social support? Was your sister there and people? How did you find that element of your transition from leaving?
Really difficult. I think the transition, 22 years of service, and then you lose. I didn't choose to leave, but I do think whether or not you choose, or it's your time, or you're forced out, it gives a real period of instability, and really that is where you almost have to push yourself to reach out. For a lot of veterans, it's not instilled in you to ask for help, but that doesn't have to be help in professional for support. For some people that will be a requirement, but also for some people, just talking to a friend, maybe joining a new group, a social group that they haven't previous done. And I know there can sometimes be this mentality that, as why would I want to go and join the civvies? But actually, you can learn a lot from them as well, because you've got your different lanes in a swimming pool, and you may think, I was in the military, I was in this lane. You're now in a different swimming lane in the civilian world, and getting yourself in that and getting amongst it and meeting other people that will either get you outside or an activity that you enjoy. But also, I was very fortunate that I found the Army Cadet Force. So I was asked to be their national ambassador. And I think there's a real sense of purpose here for a lot of veterans, because you've gained so many skills through the career that you've had. And it's a real opportunity to be able to pass those skills on and to sort of almost complete a circle, because a lot of people start off as cadets, and that's what inspires them to go into the military. But how great is it to then go back to young people? And if this keeps going on in a cycle over the years, then you're instilling the values, the standards. And there are some incredible young people out there who are just like sponges and want to lap up everything. And also, for a veteran, you get to put your uniform back on. You get to have that sense of pride, your sense of purpose. And that for me has been a real savior, if I'm honest. Yes, you're doing it in a very different way, but it kind of keeps you in that family slightly, but just with a very different slant and a different narrative as to your why you're doing it. And I would, it's still that sense of service, which I think people in the military have a real sense of purpose and a real sense of service. And yeah, you're just able to pass those skills on, and see young people thrive at the same time. So for me, it's a real win-win situation with that.
Okay. You mentioned about being outside, going outside. I am a big advocate of the therapeutic benefits of the natural environment. When you're running, maybe not on the council estate in Madrid, which would have its own features, I'm sure its highs and its lows. The environment you're running in, how significant is that for you in terms of your well-being?
Yeah, having ran on every continent, I have literally been in Antarctica, where it's it's white, it's pristine, it's cold, but again, for me it was about embracing the elements, of feeling that wind on my face, of hearing the sound of birds outside, of feeling my feet crunch on the ice. But I've also taken on something called the Marathon des Sables, which was in the Sahara Desert, and that was the extreme temperature the other way round. So it was -40 in Antarctica, it was +40 in the Sahara Desert. But again, the feeling of the sand, the beauty of what was around me, and often the people that I'm with, because although we look at getting from A to B and we look at the journey, and people, talk about the journey rather than the destination, I'm a big believer that it's who you're on that journey with as well that can make a real difference. So I've had some, really great experiences, and some of my best friends now are people that I've met on the different events, because you've got this same sense of wanting to, you've been through an experience together, much like the military, something like an arduous event. You've got your own story, each of you as individuals, but when you come together, you're on a journey together. And yeah, they're still, and we still years on talk about the things that have, that have happened on different events. So I guess it's that that connection, and I think that's being outside. You can be connected to nature, you can be connected to the environment, but you can also be connected with people. But the brilliant thing is, if you're someone who likes to be on your own, nature allows you to do that. But if you're like someone who likes to be with people, you can do it outside as well. And I think we know the impact of being able to get outside. The pandemic showed us that, because when we couldn't, it had an impact on so many people. And I've got a really, if you wouldn't, I'll share a really lovely story, if I say so myself, of an event that I was taking on. It was an Ironman, or an iron distance challenge. So it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile cycle, followed by a marathon. And this was actually, it wasn't an Ironman in the true sense of the word. It was somebody setting up their own version of an Ironman, and they needed 8 people just to recce the course and the whether or not it was going to be able to take place. So I set off and did the swim. It was on the southwest coast. It was from Slapton Sands to Blackpool Sands in the sea. Fine, managed to do that. I set off on the bike course, and it was 4 laps of the same course, of which I took a different fruit costume for every lap. And it's really hilly down in Devon. And I did that, and I got to the run, and it was actually 6 o'clock at night by this time, and everybody else, and there was only 8 of us because it was a recce, everybody else had got support crews, and I'd just gone on my own. I hadn't got that support actually on the course or off the course. And I set off and I thought, this is stupid. I'm on my own. I haven't got a map. It's not signposted. I had a different version of what it was actually going to be like. It's going to get dark. There's somebody waiting for me at the checkpoint, because there was somebody halfway. It's going to take me about 7 hours. So, and I felt the pressure for that person waiting for me. And again, that's something that I try and alleviate the pressure. So I went back to the race HQ and I said, look, tell the person at the checkpoint to go home. I said, you can all go home. I said, I'm still going to do the marathon, but I'm just going to do it up and down this road. It was a mile long. You know, you all go home. I'll just get into my van when I finish. And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, honestly, it's not a problem. So I plodded up and down this road, dressed as an apple, until 1 o'clock in the morning. It started raining, but I finished and got into my van. And the next morning, someone contacted me and they said, you know, how was it? And I said, oh, you know, told them what had happened. I said, so I didn't really do it, did I? And they went, no, of course you did. You still did the marathon. I said, it's fine. You know, it's not a problem. I'm going to go and do the marathon, the actual marathon now. And they said, what? You've just done an Ironman yesterday that you finished at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're going to go and do the marathon? I said, yeah. I said, it's not going to be quick. So I set off. And 10 miles in, one of the females who had actually won the event the day before, she came and she'd heard what I was doing and she came and joined me. So we chatted away, and the scenery along the southwest coast is incredible. And it was beautiful sunshine. And I met somebody I knew along the way before I caught up with her. And we chatted. I was dressed as a peach by this time because I'd gone into a different costume. And then somebody had heard what I was doing and they doubled my sponsorship. So it had gone from £400 to £800 because I decided to do this. And yes, you know, it took a good couple of hours, but got to the finish. And the race director, who was going to be the race director for the event, had come to the finish, and the next day and said, Sally, that wasn't an Ironman, that was a nails man. How you've gone and done that, I have no idea. And then a couple of weeks later, they contacted me and said, would you be an ambassador for our event? And I said, but I came last, you know, I didn't finish it. And they said, no, we would really like you to be an ambassador. And I said, well, who are your other ambassadors? And they said, Steve Backshaw and Bear Grylls. And I said, and you want me? Anyway, a few weeks later, they contacted me and said, Sally, when we announced you as the ambassador, we got so many people to sign up. And I said, yeah, that's because they know that they're not going to come last. Because I think for a lot of people, that's the fear of taking on something that they're going to come last. But I often say, particularly to young people, what is success? Because I could have finished that event and I could have put myself in danger. I could have put somebody else in danger, other people in danger. I wouldn't have seen a thing because it would have been dark. I wouldn't have doubled my sponsorship money. And I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been an ambassador, asked to be an ambassador. But because of the way that I did things that little bit different, I did, you know, make new friends. You know, the woman that chatted with me and went with me, yes, we did it a lot slower. But, you know, I made that connection. We saw the beauty of the outside. And I feel that I got much more success in a very, very different way than had I have done it the day before. So it brought in the beauty of the outdoors, the people, the connection, and a different version of success.
Just one or two questions from me, Sally. Do your sister or do other family members, did they run? The reason I'm asking that is I'm not a runner, but by being inspired by yourself, by Caroline, by those around me, can anyone do it, or are you built for it, do you think?
No, I'll give you a reason. I'll tell you, I truly believe that anybody can, if they really want to, run a marathon. Not everybody wants to, and it may be a 10K, it may be a 5K, it may be going out and getting out. And the reason I think that everybody can is if you had your friends, your family, your you know, somebody, a loved one that was 26.2 miles away from you and they were in trouble. If there was no cars, no planes, no trains, no other way of getting there, but they were in desperate trouble, I'd ask you, would you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And we only need to look at Ukraine, you know, the people with, you know, pushchairs that are walking to places. It doesn't mean that we would all get there at exactly the same time, but that doesn't matter. It's the fact that you can, if your desire and the reason behind it is strong enough. And I did actually do an event last year, so it was called Escape from Alcatraz. and it was swimming from Alcatraz. Now, for me, this again was a real metaphor. I like to have meaning and reasons to why I do the events. Now, Alcatraz is a prison, obviously, and I feel that mental illness is like being a prisoner in your own mind. And so although the swim was across the currents, the strong currents, the cold and the choppy water, as I was swimming, I actually did it dressed as a convict as well, because I wanted to make the invisible illness visible. So everybody else was in a black wetsuit. I had my black wetsuit on, but on top I had the black and white striped looked like pajamas. So I now know when I learnt to swim and I had to have to put my pajamas on to learn to swim, I now know why I did it. But I stood out. I was the only one who was like this, and we jumped off the boat and I was swimming, and I suddenly got to a place where I could really feel how strong the current was. And it reminded me how, with my mental health, when I've really struggled, I fought against that current, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was just fighting and fighting and fighting. And I suddenly just thought to myself, just go with the flow. So I went with the flow and I got myself to safety. I got myself to the side and onto the shore. It wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. And again, that's like life. I've not always got to the place where I wanted to be, but I was at safety. So I was able to regroup. I got on the bike. It was a triathlon. Got on the bike, and then the hills of San Francisco were hilly. It was ups and downs, and that to me was like the ups and downs of mental health. And then the run went past the Golden Gate Bridge, and I stood and I just reflected, and I thought, wow, the Golden Gate Bridge is the support. It is the friends, the family, the clinicians that can bridge the gap to help you escape from Alcatraz. And it just all meant so much to me. So I don't believe that you have to be an athlete. I don't believe that you have to have a real desire for sport particularly, but just movement. As you said at the beginning, it might be dancing in the kitchen, and that might be the only thing that you can do if you've got young children, or but it is something that you can do. And often it's a sense of reframing things and going, what can I do with what I've got? Because we don't always have different opportunities that other people do, but we certainly have more opportunities that some people don't have. And I think that's a good way to be able to look at things.
Wow, listen, a heartfelt thank you to Bernie and Sally, and for your time, Sally, for sharing your experiences. Such an inspiration, and so humble and modest with it. BuildForce invests heavily in our mental health programme because we will all struggle at points in our life, and we do need guidance and a gentle nudge. And we have our sports and wellbeing programme led by Caroline in response to this very topic we've discussed today. So go to the website and get involved in any event that's coming up. Help is out there and people do care. If you need our help or just want to chat, please get in touch with the BuildForce team. I'll share the details. Or if you'd like to chat with Bernie and share your own experiences, we're happy to arrange this for you. So best wishes to you all, and please be kind to yourself.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.